We thought the baby was gone. Heartbreaking hours inside the hospital room. It started with a quiet whisper in the middle of the night, a whisper Songyun wasn't even sure she had spoken aloud. It was just a feeling at first, a strange heaviness in her stomach that didn't feel like movement or normal discomfort. It felt like something had paused, something had held its breath, something had changed. She lay in bed with her hands pressed to her belly, waiting, listening, breathing slowly, counting seconds between what she hoped were kicks, flutters, signs of life, but they didn't come, not in the way she was used to, not with the playful push against her ribs that had become her comfort at night. Shu Kai was asleep beside her, or at least pretending to be. He had spent the entire day pacing and overthinking, trying to act calm when he was clearly not. Ever since her last appointment, the fear had settled into both of them like a fog, thick and unspoken. No one said the word premature, but it hung in the air between every sentence. When she finally nudged him, he sat up immediately, no questions, just instinct. His eyes searched hers in the dark and she didn't need to say anything more than "it feels wrong." He was on his feet before she finished the sentence, grabbing the overnight bag they had packed weeks ago, calling the hospital as he moved, his voice steady but his hands shaking. She dressed quietly, not bothering with makeup or comfort, just clothes, flat shoes, a coat that didn't fit her belly anymore. The car ride was silent, no music, just headlights carving through empty streets. Shu Kai drove like he was trying not to panic. Every red light felt like a test of patience, every green light a small relief, and when they pulled up to the private entrance of the hospital, a nurse was already waiting for them with a wheelchair and a clipboard. Songyun didn't protest when they wheeled her in. She didn't look back at the car or at the sky or at Shu Kai. She just focused on breathing, one breath at a time, deep and long and slow, pretending that everything was fine, pretending that the silence in her body didn't terrify her. Inside, the nurses moved fast. They attached monitors, asked questions, checked her vitals, called the doctor on call, and all the while Shu Kai stood in the corner of the room with his arms crossed, his back straight, his jaw tight, but his eyes wide with fear. The first scan showed nothing alarming, no contractions, no bleeding, no immediate cause for panic, but when the doctor moved the probe across her stomach and waited for the sound of the heartbeat, the silence stretched too long. Everyone knew what was supposed to happen. That familiar, rapid thumping that filled the room like a song, the sound that brought tears to their eyes the first time they heard it, but this time it didn't come, not right away. The doctor didn't panic, not on the outside. She adjusted the machine, changed angles, asked Songyun to shift slightly, pressed a little deeper, but still the monitor stayed quiet. Shu Kai took a step forward, his lips parted, and in that moment he looked like a man about to lose everything. He whispered her name but she didn't look at him. She was staring at the ceiling now, eyes open, tears running sideways across her temples, her hands shaking at her sides. "We're not finding a heartbeat yet," the doctor said carefully. "Yet," she repeated, which meant there was still hope, but also fear. Shu Kai grabbed a chair and pulled it beside the bed, took her hand and held it tightly, so tightly it hurt, but she didn't let go. Time moved slowly after that. The doctor called in a specialist, more machines were brought in, the lights dimmed. The nurse dimmed the monitor so no one could see it flickering empty, and Songyun began to cry. Not loud, not messy, just a soft steady stream of tears that soaked her pillow and filled the silence in the room with something heavier than words. Shu Kai wiped them as fast as they came but his own tears were close behind. He pressed his forehead to her hand and whispered things he never thought he would say out loud, promises, prayers, apologies, bargains with a universe that didn't owe them anything. He begged for one more sign, one more sound, just one. And then, a flicker. The monitor blinked once, then again, and the room went still. The doctor leaned in, adjusted the settings, moved the probe slightly, and then, finally, the sound came. A heartbeat. Faint at first, then stronger, then real. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't what they expected, but it was there, steady, present, alive. Songyun gasped, her hand flew to her mouth. Shu Kai stood up so fast the chair fell behind him, and the nurse let out a soft sound that was half a sob. The baby's heartbeat was weak but stable, the doctor said. They needed to monitor her closely, they needed to keep her overnight, maybe longer, and Shu Kai nodded through his tears, nodding to everything, agreeing to anything. He didn't leave her side. That night, he sat beside her bed and watched her sleep, the monitors still beeping gently, the sound no longer terrifying but comforting. A lullaby that kept them both tethered to hope. He thought about how close they had come, how empty the room had felt just minutes earlier, How his world had almost ended before his child even opened their eyes. He thought about how strong she was, how she didn't scream or break down, how she endured it all with silent bravery, how she held on even when her body tried to let go. And he thought about the promise he made when they first found out they were expecting, that no matter what happened, he would never let her go through it alone. By morning, the baby's heartbeat had strengthened slightly. The doctor was optimistic but cautious. They would need bed rest, reduced stress, and careful monitoring, but for now, the baby was safe. When Songyun opened her eyes and saw him there, still holding her hand, she didn't say anything, she just smiled faintly, and he leaned in and kissed her forehead. They didn't speak much that morning. There was no need. The silence between them was no longer filled with fear, but gratitude. Later that day, a hospital staff member leaked a short audio clip from outside their room, just a few seconds, just the sound of the monitor and Shu Kai's voice whispering, "It's okay, I'm here, I've got you." It went viral within an hour. Fans around the world began to post messages, art, letters, prayers. Some recalled their own losses, their own heartbreaks, others simply wrote, "Thank you for showing us real love." But inside that hospital room, Shu Kai didn't care about the internet, or the headlines, or the trending hashtags. He only cared about the sound of that heartbeat, and the weight of her hand in his. They stayed like that for days. The fear didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It became something they carried together, something that reminded them of how close they came to losing it all, and how lucky they were to still be holding on. Songyun was discharged. We heard her scream, "Night panic," after hospital release shocks fans. They thought they had seen the worst of it already, but life had a different plan, the kind of plan that does not knock before entering, the kind that rattles everything you think is steady and makes you question the very air you are breathing. The moment Songyun was wheeled into the emergency room for the second time in 1 week, Shu Kai could no longer pretend he was holding it together. He followed the nurses, but this time, his eyes did not look strong, they looked broken, like a mirror too tired to reflect anything but fear. It was not just the scream that haunted him, it was the silence that followed, the way her voice trembled when she said it stopped again, the way her fingers dug into his wrist as if she were holding on to the last thread of reality she had left. Inside the hospital, the lights felt brighter than usual, or maybe it was just the way they bounced off the tears in her eyes, or the way they lit up Shu Kai's shadow as he stood there helpless, waiting for news he already feared. The doctors moved quickly. They had seen them before, they knew the situation, and they knew the weight of this pregnancy, the public attention, the emotional weight, the late-night collapse, the headlines and whispers and speculation. They had read about it all, and now they were living it in real time. The first scan was inconclusive, and no one dared say anything. Songyun turned her face away from the ceiling and toward Shu Kai. Her eyes locked on his, as if she were memorizing him in case it was the last time, and that broke him completely. He took her hand again and whispered the same words he had whispered the first time. "I'm here. You're not alone. We're doing this together, no matter what." He repeated it again and again, until his voice faded into a hush, and the room finally filled with the sound they had been waiting for. The baby's heartbeat returned. It was weak, it was irregular, it was not what they hoped for, but it was there. And in that moment, it was everything. Tears came fast for both of them, not the kind that could be held back or brushed away, but the kind that demanded to be seen, the kind that let the entire world know that they were human, and that they were afraid. The doctors explained everything calmly and clearly, but the only part Shu Kai truly heard was the word "stay." She needs to stay under observation until further notice. Bed rest. Round-the-clock support. No visitors. No noise. Just quiet recovery and time. Shu Kai did not hesitate. He nodded. He agreed to it all. And when they said she could be moved into a private room, he asked if a bed could be added beside hers. Not a couch, not a chair, a bed. He wasn't leaving this time, not for food, not for sleep, not for work. He had already cancelled everything weeks ago, and he would do it again and again, until she was safe. As the hours passed, fans began to notice the silence online again. No posts, no appearances, no press, no explanations. And then the video reappeared. The one from across the street. The one showing Shu Kai carrying her into the hospital in the middle of the night with no shoes on, just panic in his steps and heartbreak in his arms. It went viral again, But this time the comments were different. There was less gossip and more worry, less drama and more compassion. People began to post under the hashtag Stay Strong Tan Songyun. Thousands, then millions of messages flooded the internet, all echoing one thing. We are with you. But inside that hospital room, the only voices that mattered were their own. And the only sound louder than the machines was the rhythm of shared silence. Shu Kai sat beside her, reading to her softly, playing the lullaby they had chosen months ago, singing it in a whisper even though she was awake, because he believed the baby could hear it too. Tan Songyun stayed quiet for a long time, not because she was afraid, but because she was exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. She had spent weeks pretending to be stronger than she felt, and now her body had called her bluff. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw and slow. She said, "I don't want to be brave anymore." And Shu Kai looked at her for a long time before answering. "Then don't be. You don't have to be brave for me. Not anymore. Not ever again." She nodded, but her tears betrayed her. The truth was, she had been holding on for too long, smiling through pain, walking through fire. And now, she wanted to stop. She wanted to fall apart and know that someone else would hold the pieces. Shu Kai kissed her knuckles and whispered, "Fall, I've got you." And that was all she needed. In the days that followed, the doctors became more hopeful. Her vitals improved slowly. The baby's heartbeat steadied, inch by inch, breath by breath. And the word stable became a word they finally believed. Still, the journey was far from over. She was not allowed to sit up for long, not allowed to walk, not allowed to do anything that could stress her system. Even reading the news was discouraged. But sometimes, things found their way in anyway. One night, a nurse came in with tears in her eyes, and Tan Songyun asked what was wrong. The nurse hesitated, then showed her a printed tweet. It read, "Dear Tan Songyun, I lost my baby last year, and I've been silently watching your journey. You make me believe again. Thank you for being so strong." Tan Songyun broke down in quiet sobs that night, not because she was sad, but because for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Shu Kai held her and cried too, the kind of cry that came from understanding that their story was not just theirs anymore. It belonged to every mother who had ever feared a silent ultrasound, to every father who had watched his world shake from the corner of a hospital room, to every couple who had found hope in the darkest places. Then came the moment that changed everything again. The doctor entered one morning with a serious look and said, "The next 24 hours are crucial. We will monitor everything. If the baby remains stable, we can delay the delivery. If not, we may have to prepare you early." Neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other. And in that look were 1,000 conversations, 1,000 memories, 1,000 promises. That no matter what, they would face it together. That day, Shu Kai did not sit. He stood beside her the entire time, holding her hand, talking to her belly, reading stories aloud, telling jokes, singing off key, and repeating again and again. "We love you. We are waiting for you. Stay with us. Just a little longer." Tan Songyun smiled through her exhaustion and whispered, "Our baby is a fighter." And Shu Kai nodded and added, "Just like you." That night, the monitor remained steady. The heartbeat stayed true. And the doctor smiled for the first time in days. "We have time," she said softly. "We have time." It was the most beautiful sentence they had heard since this began. Outside the hospital, fans held a candlelight vigil. People brought white balloons, wrote messages of hope and healing. And even though security kept them away from the doors, their presence was felt. Every flicker of light, every whisper of support, every prayer, wrapped around the hospital like a quiet storm of love.